the cluster of everything going on at his facility.
It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Todd Chrisley's family and lawyers just heard some shocking news about his time in prison. Allegedly, Todd is being mistreated.
There's nothing about federal prison that would make you want to stay.
He's not living in the Four Seasons.
He is
correct?
not, no.
Thank you.
No, and your mom is not either.
And the living conditions he has to deal with are downright scary. From mold to asbestos to lack of air conditioning.
And mom has rattlesnakes just casually slithering on the floor in front of her.
You guys won't believe what Todd's life in prison apparently looks like.
They both live in states, or they're both in states where it gets 100+ degrees and there's no air conditioning.
Todd's attorney, Jay Sturgeon, recently talked to TMZ, and what he revealed is genuinely disturbing. According to Jay, Todd is being treated unfairly in prison by the people working there. Allegedly, this mistreatment has to do with his fame. It sounds like Todd thinks that people have it out for him because he's a public figure. Jay said that Todd even told him that someone took a photo of him while he was asleep. He also allegedly hasn't been receiving any mail, which he thinks is really suspicious. Apparently, Todd is convinced that someone has been destroying his mail. We don't really know why he thinks this, other than because he's not actually been getting any mail, but there doesn't seem to be any other proof of Todd's claims. Plus, Jay and Todd haven't even given us a reason why anyone would want or need to destroy Todd's mail. It's all just kind of weird, but it's clear that Todd is not having a good time in prison. Jay recently submitted an interesting application. He asked for Todd to be allowed to stay in home confinement. Obviously, if Todd's actually being mistreated, then that might be a good idea. But even though there might be a good reason for him to get transferred, I don't actually think it's going to happen. Todd and Julie only went to prison earlier this year, and Todd was sentenced to 12 years in prison. It hasn't even been a year, so I don't think it's likely that he'll be allowed to switch to home confinement so soon. That being said, I understand why he would want something like that, because apparently the situation is even worse than we thought. Supposedly, Todd isn't just being mistreated because of his fame, he also has to live in some pretty horrible conditions. Savannah and Chase discussed this on a recent episode of her podcast, and they described the inhumane conditions in Todd's prison. Savannah said that it was just a complete nightmare, and Chase said that he recently went to visit Todd, and he found out that his dad's prison had no air conditioning. This is apparently the case in Julie's prison too, and if it's true, that's pretty horrible. They're both in states where it's getting really hot right now. Todd's in Florida and Julie's in Kentucky, and the summer heat in both states has been pretty intense. What's worse, both prisons apparently have a huge problem with black mold and asbestos, and Savannah even claimed that there's lead-based paint at both facilities. I'm not sure how she would know that unless she was testing the paint herself, so we don't know if any of this is actually true, but if it is, then that's genuinely awful. Even though Todd is the one making headlines with his complaints right now, it sounds like Julie might actually have it even worse. We already know that being in prison has taken a huge toll on her mental health, but there's more, because on her podcast, Savannah also claimed that there were rattlesnakes slithering on the floor in front of Julie. Chase said that they weren't actually rattlesnakes. According to him, they were some other type of poisonous snake, but honestly, that distinction might not even matter that much. Either way, if this is true, Julie has to deal with actual snakes in her prison. Whether she and Todd are guilty or not, this isn't really acceptable. These kinds of conditions actually are inhumane. As Chase pointed out, it's not fear factor. But Savannah also made a good point about their living conditions. She said that at the end of the day, Todd and Julie are in prison, so unfortunately a lot of people won't really have any sympathy for them. Chase and Savannah also said that it might be really hard to actually do anything about these supposed horrible conditions, because allegedly the prison facilities always get told beforehand if there's going to be an inspection. According to Savannah, this gives them time to hide all those awful conditions, so whenever an inspection happens, the inspector won't really see any of those things. Again, it's hard to say if any of this is true. It's definitely possible that some of this has been exaggerated. Some of Todd's claims are a little odd, like why would someone take a photo of him while he was asleep, and why would they destroy his mail? But at the same time, it's definitely possible that at least some of this is true. I can see how there would be terrible air conditioning at the facility, and I agree that in the summer that's not really acceptable at all. While the Chrisleys didn't actually get a direct response to their claims, a representative from the Bureau of Prisons did make a statement. The representative said that the facilities follow Environmental Protection Agency and other official guidelines. It was noted that all the inmates have access to unlimited drinking water, and that ventilation is monitored. That's a pretty interesting response. I mean, it definitely doesn't address all of the claims that the Chrisleys made. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything that Savannah and Chase said is definitely true, but it might be. And if it is, well, I honestly feel really bad for Todd and Julie, especially Julie, who we know has been struggling with all of this since the very beginning. Savannah and Chase said that their parents are doing fine with what they've been given. They're not giving up or anything like that, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't been difficult for them. It's actually interesting that Todd seems to be so miserable right now, because not too long ago it sounded like he was actually doing okay. Julie's clearly been struggling this whole time, but back in April, Lindsay actually said some pretty surprising things about Todd. She said that Todd was looking really great. According to Lindsay, his hair looked much better. It apparently got a little longer and grayer, but she thought that this was a really good look on Todd. She also said that Todd wasn't biting his nails nearly as much, and overall she said that he seemed to be in a much better place. Lindsay claimed that Todd was in great spirits and that he was really just embracing the process in prison and making the best of it. She also said that Todd had made some really good friends in prison and that he talked to her about those friends a lot. Like I said, all this came out back in April, so it's only been a couple of months since then, which is what makes it so strange that Todd seems to be so desperate right now. It seems like prison life has finally gotten to him, or maybe something has changed in these past few months. Either way, it's clear that Todd's not in high spirits anymore. He's clearly struggling with the living conditions, and he also seems to be highly suspicious of the people around him. It's not clear if he's just unhappy with the staff, or maybe the reality of the situation and the fact that he has to spend 12 years there is finally hitting him. The good news for Todd and Julie is that Savannah is still fighting for them as hard as she can. She recently said that she was going to send a letter to all US senators. She's clearly not happy with how her parents' case and time in prison have been handled so far, so maybe things will actually change for Todd and Julie. There's also still hope that Todd might get released to home confinement, although like I said, I don't think the chances are super high. But anyway, what do you guys think about all this? What do you think about the supposed conditions in Todd's and Julie's prisons? Do you think they're true, or do you think they might be a little exaggerated? I mean, I almost hope that these allegations aren't actually true, because no one should have to live like that, and I just can't see them getting released to do home arrest. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below.